From ComedyFilmNerds.com with Graham Elwood,
The Floating Forest of Pandora, ever heard of it?
and Chris Mancini.
What clan are you from?
This is the Comedy Film Nerds Podcast.
It's not that great.
This is not the ninja movie I signed up for.
Cousin Eddie's package.
Why can't this happen? I got nothing going on.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Comedy Film Nerds Podcast.
No, too fast.
Too
slow
fast?
it down. Yeah, slow it down. Yeah,
So,
just,
I wanted to
we
come
have
in
an hour.
intense. I wanted to be like, this is the most amazing podcast you've ever heard in your
Well,
entire
that's
life.
more intense. You were just fast before.
I was just too fast.
Yeah, try it again.
I think you're judging me. I think this is bullshit. This is a bullshit way to open a show. That's what I think.
You know, let's do something different.
What's that?
Let's get right into it.
Let's get right into it. You don't want to hear any more of my nonsense? My name is Graham Elwood.
I'm Chris Mancini. Hey, thanks for... Well, should we do iTuning? No, let's do something
Thanks for
else.
iTuning. Thanks for Stitchering.
Thanks for Stitchering
Well,
in.
there's people that listen to this on Stitcher, right?
Not anymore.
Oh, Stitcher folded since we last recorded. Stitcher went out of business.
know.
Thanks, Stitcher. You gave it a good run.
We just made that up. I don't know. If you're listening on Stitcher, great. Happy
for
to
you.
have you.
Good for you.
Let's get right into introducing our guest.
Let's do it.
Yeah, very excited to have him here. First time here in the
First time in the
Comedy
Nerd
Film Nerds
Cave.
garage.
He and I have been friends for quite some time.
Not one comment on the gargoyle yet.
Not one comment. He came in, first thing he wanted weight bench. I think
Yeah,
it says
yeah.
about who he is as a guest.
Yes.
He-
It is.
I
It's-
take my workouts very, very seriously. America. This is broadcast to America, isn't it?
yes, it is.
I am, after all, an American.
Folks, that's the gravelly voice of a victorious man in the name of Bryan Callen.
Bryan Callen, ladies and gentlemen, in the house.
Victorious and Victorian.
Chris Mancini, Graham Elwood, and Bryan Callen. Starring the podcast. It's great names.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Except for-
Bryan Callen.
It's not a very good name, really. Chris Mancini, Graham Elwood, Bryan Callen. It just doesn't have that action.
have that punch.
Doesn't really do it.
Starring
I can't be part of the podcast, guys. As a guest, though, I can.
starring Jason Statham and Bryan Callen.
And Bryan Callen.
the wacky sidekick.
True, it's so true.
You're like the clown boy.
Andy Couture, Jason Statham, and Bryan Callen. Too many Bryan Callen.
Jet Li, The Rock, Vin Diesel, and Bryan Callen.
As the guy all of them fuck. In prison.
In the rape of Cell Block C.
That's right. Pick a spot on the wall, boy. Fine, I'm Bryan Callen.
We just bought you from the Aryans for a pack of smokes.
Put this wig on. But guys, I want to be part of the gang.
Yes. And where'd you get this wig?
Where did you get that wig? That's contraband.
Yeah.
30 days in the hole.
Well, I'm excited today because we're going to be talking about comedy movies.
Yes, and
In all their forms.
in all their glorious
Good, bad,
forms.
and miserable.
But good, bad, and miserable. And what better than to talk to a man that's been in an unheard of couple of comedy movies that
Yeah.
hasn't done well at the box office.
Yeah,
I was
very
thinking about
obscure.
that. I was
Where did
thinking
it take the nosedive? Where do you think it went wrong?
I think it was probably in the first Hangover. I think that's really where I made my big mistake. When I was part of that little movie.
That little
where
movie
I
that-
flew to Vegas.
Little movie that could.
Todd Phillips was like, "Hey, I want you to play Eddie." And I was like, "All right." And he was initially like a guy who talks like this from New York. You know, he wasn't even supposed to be from Lebanon. But then I got to the table read, and I was like, maybe he should talk like this. This guy.
You made that choice?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he just let you do
He
that.
loved it. I did it right at the table read. He goes, "Oh, that's the guy. That's what I want you to do." I was like, because I was thinking about it. I was like, I could be Eddie. I could be a guy who talks, who does weddings in the way they wrote it. And I said, but because when I went into the audition, I was doing it like I added a bunch of stuff because he loves when I do that. I was like, listen, I can get you some blow. I can get you chicks. I got chicks. I mean, real Russians with tits like this, with nip, the whole thing. He loves all that. I can get you guns. I can get you whatever the fuck you. So we did this whole thing, and then I got to the table read, and I was like, I think he should be from Lebanon, Armenia, Israel.
Yeah.
just a guy who comes to, he's going to make
Hey,
a very,
buddy.
very good. I make a very good price for you. There's no problem for me. I can make a very good price. That's the kind of guy that opens a wedding chapel, and then he just let me go, and they just loved it. In the all that stuff, like, are you cracking my balls? It was supposed to be a busting my balls,
Right.
But, they love all that weird.
With the way they slightly mispronounce
when I
things.
got shot, I'm like, "Gisachta sharamota," which means your mother's a whore, in Arabic, and they just loved it. So he just let me add. I had a girl there. Wasn't supposed to be a girl there. I get the baklava. All that stuff was, just stuff that I had done kind of in the audition, and sure enough, he has a girl there. So that's what makes Todd so.
Yeah, go through that experience of making the first one. I mean, we've already touched on it a little bit what it was like making that, and sort of the now that as we sit here now, as The Hangover 2 is the most successful R-rated movie ever.
But you were in The Hangover too, but a different character, right?
Different character, and part of it was what was interesting is I think that I don't want to speak for Todd, but I was supposed to go do this movie and or this other movie, and I get a call in Vegas, and he says, "Hey, man, I need you to get me out of this scene." It was an interesting choice of word because the guy hired just I guess maybe he doesn't. One thing he hates is when somebody makes the movie about themselves.
Right.
So you got to be a team player with Todd. And part of what Todd loves about making movies is he gets to surround himself with his friends and hang out for 3 months. And so he knew that I would come in and I would do what he needed. I'd get out. And I said, and he wanted that same accent. And I said, well, but they're going to think it's Eddie with a wig. He goes, no, they're not. They're going to, we'll change your look. And when I saw it, I did think it was significantly different in that they were really good with the makeup and the wig and stuff. And maybe people who watched it said, that's that same actor. But I don't know. I mean, I think there was enough of a difference. And the story was moving, so you didn't really care about this guy. I just had to play a rough and tumble guy who was, selling drugs. And my job there was just to be a bridge. I was in Thailand for 12 days just to be a bridge, just to get him out of the scene. And he knew I'd do that. I'm not going to try to shine. But that's kind of what I think part of what makes a great movie work, I believe, is teamwork and synergy. And if you look at someone like Bradley Cooper, who's sort of became
Have you seen him naked?
I have seen him naked.
Outstanding.
Yeah, we served some time together in my mind. And
was he cell box C?
I'm sorry. Yes. And that's when I just break into song. But those when you work with someone like Bradley Cooper, he's always trying to make you look better. Like, he'll be like, dude, I think he changed my whole look. He's like, you can't have sleeves on, bro. You gotta have like a vest with and he was basically dressing me. And Todd listens to that. So he's the guy who he's always trying to make the movie as a whole better.
Did he dress everyone or just you?
Well, I just me, but I mean, Bradley's should be a director, and he will be. Because he's just one of those guys who's got incredible visual sense and proportion and spatial relationship notions and all these things that.
Well, you hit on something really interesting. Is what makes what made Hangover 2 a Hangover work? But what do you think makes a great comedy movie work? Just any comedy movie. What does it need to have?
I think it has to have I don't believe there's a huge difference between a comedy movie, a quote unquote, or just a good movie. And what I mean by that is, you always have to have structure, and you have to want for the main character. And Todd and I've talked to him about how he writes his movies. Remember, this is a guy who wrote Old School. He wrote Go. He wrote Road Trip. Road Trip. He wrote Old School. He wrote a lot of Borat, which nobody knows about. This guy's a genius.
Until now.
And then Hangover, and Hangover 2. This guy's, and what I talked to him about, I said, what are you doing? And for Todd, if you look at Old School, which is an amazing movie.
It's a hilarious movie.
It's such a good movie structurally, too. Like, I was just watching it, and the character development, he knows exactly who the archetype characters are. It's not like he goes into all these details and background history, but he knows who he's writing about, and he outlines it. I mean, he's a really, really stringent, he and Scott Armstrong, about outlining the shit out of that thing so they know exactly what the arc of the character is, where they're going, and why they're going there. And getting us to really get invested in this character's journey. And I said to him, I go, what's the biggest thing about making a movie? He said, I just try to keep everybody in the same movie. You got to keep everybody in the same movie. I make sure I know where I'm going with it. And then within that, he lets the actors breathe. He lets the actors, add to his script and bring their own flavor and their own stamp. But I think ultimately, to answer your question, what makes a great comedy movie is, first, you've got to be invested in the character's journey. You've got to have a story. That's the other thing that Judd Apatow does as well. There are very well structured stories where the character is somebody you want for, and who changes at the end. They have a problem. There's a question raised, and
that's
answer
classic screenplay structure.
That's
It does not
exactly
even
right.
comedy.
That's exactly right. And then within that, what really makes a comedy work, I think, is surprise. You laugh, when you do stand-up, as you guys know, what the audience is laughing at is a magic trick. You're surprising them.
Right.
You think they think you're going to say one thing, and then you surprise them with another.
Right.
And that's what we work so hard on. And that, by the way, is... You can't talk about surprise without talking about rhythm. There is a musicality to comedy. There is a musicality to a funny script.
Mm-hmm.
There is music to it. And there's crescendo, and there's all the things that musicians
I think the thing you're touching on goes to it points to the problems when a comedy movie fails, and we talked about this in a couple episodes ago.
We'll talk about more about it in depth because it's a really important point.
But it is a very important point, and the thing I want to point out is like those movies, like you said, and this was several episodes ago that we did with Tig, where you pointed out there was an interview with Jim Carrey about a script where literally there would be a page just say, and then Jim Carrey does something wacky.
Yeah.
And it's just like Todd Phillips is letting you improvise within the structure that he's created. Like you have to have a structure. It's like when I've seen comics or people who studied like improvisation. They've taken improvisation classes.
Right.
And they think, well, I can just go on stage with stand-up and just wing it. No, you can't. But you have to have a structure. If you're doing a joke and something happens and you go off on a riff or a tangent, that's phenomenal. But you can't just walk up there with comedy and just be like, "Hey, what's up, wacky shirt?"
Never works.
No, never works.
I've auditioned
There's
for
a few people that can pull it off, but it's what you can count them on one hand.
I think one finger.
Even then, I've auditioned for Curb Your Enthusiasm a number of times, and they all. And I did a Fat Actress was improv. I don't want to use that as a great show, but anytime, like for example, Curb Your Enthusiasm, you're given very, very specific guidelines and character in which to, like you said, improvise. Mm-hmm. And the other main thing I think that makes a movie really funny is Bryan Callen. Yeah. Did I say that part? I don't know if I said that part. Again, see how I just did that, America? I just surprised
How did
them.
you just put that on a loop? That
was
so weird.
It was just weird.
Yeah, I just led you down a road and then I
One of the things that you guys are talking about, and this is, I think, really important, this gets into sometimes what makes a comedy movie fail, is that you have to have, first of all, the structure of an actual movie, and then the comedy comes from there. But when you deal with characters, it's very important to keep the comedy inside what the characters would do and what they would react to. Right. A lot of times comedic films get caught in this big set piece sketchy feel to it where it's like, okay, well, we need a big funny set piece, but this wouldn't really match what the character does. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you have a series of sketches instead of a through line with actual characters. It's the biggest mistake
that a lot of novice writers make. And also tone is huge. What is the tone of your movie?
What is the comedic tone?
Yeah,
like people don't understand comedic tone. Like we get that as comics because it's like you know certain comics and you know somebody said like whatever, like the name Maria Bamford. I'm like, well, her tone is very specific. She has a very she's quirky. She tells really kind of weird stories, and that's her tone and her vibe. Yep. Whereas somebody else has a bigger tone or whatever.
I mean, you may have a funny scene in your movie, but if it doesn't match the characters, it's going to stand out in the movie like it doesn't fit.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I think, in my opinion, what Todd and Judd Apatow, Todd Phillips and Judd Apatow do so well. For that matter, Mel Brooks, those guys did it so well.
You knew what those movies were.
And Mel Brooks was broader. You look at Young Frankenstein,
That's right.
As broad as that comedy was, it still fit into the structure and the world that he created.
They were such stories, and the characters were so amazing. Yeah. Think about Young Frankenstein. For me, by the way, that's my top three.
Oh, it's High Anxiety. The jokes in High Anxiety.
Blazing Saddles?
Blazing Saddles is amazing, and that was again Mel Brooks had a specific tone, and he did what a good filmmaker does, which is he adjusts his tone for each film. He doesn't jam his tone like he. It's not like his tone is inflexible. Yeah. And that's, again, those three movies we just talked about are amazing classic films.
Now, all those rules that we just said, there's occasionally movies that break them and do them brilliantly. And who's what comes to mind is the 1930 movies with the Marx Brothers. Mm-hmm. They ultimately, they have their characters. They do these sketches within a broader framework, but their movies are really funny. They're really good.
But you see, the Marx Brothers, they grew up doing that in their kitchen and with their mother at the helm.
Right.
And so, it's like, did you see The Trip recently?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
Very, very good movie. But nothing really happens. But I thought it was interesting because what they did was they gave form to what these two guys do as friends every day.
Right.
Which is just play.
Yeah.
And they do impressions at each other and they have these silly arguments and sometimes I think I think what the Marx Brothers did, for that matter, the Three Stooges, I was just watching because my buddy Will Sasso is doing that now, and I was watching some old clips of the Three Stooges. There was still a great deal of discipline to tone and a great deal of discipline to through line and to consistency. So that's not easy to do. They knew exactly who those characters
And
were.
here's the difference, Chris, I think, is yes, they were doing that, but also, like what Bryan said, they grew up doing that, but that was also the comedic tone of that era.
Sure.
Was like watch W.C. Field movies. He's hilarious, and he's doing little sketches and stuff like that. But again, they grew up in vaudeville. They grew up doing sketches.
That was the next evolution.
That was the next
film.
evolution. Like that is early comedy films. The problem when somebody does that today, I think it's like laziness. You know what I mean? Like those guys, that's what they knew. That's what they did back in the 30s. Today, when somebody does that, they just are lazy. They're just like,
They don't want to string a movie together.
Right. They think of a couple funny set pieces and then they literally write, oh, and Jim Carrey acts wacky here.
Right.
Will Ferrell riffs. They just
Yeah.
put that in the script, and that's bullshit.
Yep, sure is. And then finally in the 70s, Monty Python and the Holy Grail pulled it off.
I mean,
Well, that's probably my favorite comedy movie of all
it
time.
was such a genius piece of work. And I never stopped being astonished at that movie.
Still,
That
watch it again.
effort,
Yeah.
Oh, forget it.
Yeah.
That
ending.
effort,
Spoiler alert.
but I mean, anybody who's into comedy, if you don't speak that language, if you haven't seen that movie, then we can't have a conversation. It's like somebody coming to you and saying, I'm really want to get into health, and he's chain smoking. I don't feel well. But do you have any dietary tips? I'm not talking to you. Stop smoking.
Or donuts.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's like
Where's a Twinkie store? I really want to get healthy.
Those movies were so, but I mean, again, talk about like just characters and actually a through line. They had such a sense of history.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's the thing about that movie.
They knew the legend.
They
In and out.
knew the legend. So historically, they knew what they were talking about. They were very smart guys. They had plenty of wacky jokes in there, slapsticky stuff, but you had slapstick under the structure,
Oh my
the
God,
foundation
you're
of an
talking about
intelligence.
Highly educated men. It's
Yes.
like Zeppelin. You ever listen to Zeppelin songs like Ramble On? It's about they're referencing the J.R. Tolkien's
There's constant Tolkien references.
whatever it's
in
called. Yeah.
songs.
I mean these
Ring
guys.
wraiths.
These guys. My God, Jimmy Page has a library on he's read everything. These guys have read everything. They grew up in a time when it wasn't okay not to have read and understand the significance of things like Moby Dick and
Right.
The Hobbit and those things. You had to read that stuff. And it
Ignorance
informed-
wasn't embraced as like, oh, just an average person.
Sympathy for the Devil was written based on a book called The Master and Margarita, which was written by a Russian author that both my boy
Mick Jagger.
Mick Jagger and Keith Richards had read and said, "This is a great book. Let's write a song about this."
Yes.
Yeah, man. Yeah, when you base a 5-minute song on a huge novel, guess what? You're gonna get that ain't tricks and hooks. You're gonna have something that's really informed and inspired.
Yes.
And I believe that Monty Python, the Holy Grail, and a lot of these movies are inspired. I'll tell you what, Todd. I'll speak for Todd about The Hangover for a second, and I'm speaking out of school here, but I believe what really drove him with The Hangover was that this guy had such guts. He was trying to get Old School 2 off the ground. Nobody wanted to do it because he'd come off of School for Scoundrels, and it wasn't as big a success for a lot of reasons. Not Todd's fault, but at the end of the day, he was coming off that saying, "Man, I can't. Nobody wants to do Old School 2, and I spent all this time writing this script. All right, screw you, bitches. I'm going to write a little movie." I'm going to put non-stars in it.
No names.
I've known Bradley. I knew Bradley 7 years before all that. I mean, he was doing all this stuff, but he was like, nobody's watching anything. Zach Galifianakis and I used to have a contest to see who'd get famous faster, just as jokes. We'd call each other being like, yeah, I'm doing this arc on such and such. Oh, is that good? I don't know if that's good. What are you doing? Probably stand-up? I mean, we'd always do this joke. But, all these guys have been bouncing around. Ed, I had just done a movie with called The Goods, but he wasn't. Ed was...
America
Ed was,
looked at that movie as the guy from The Office, that good-looking dude.
Yeah, that's right.
And some guy
That's
with
right.
a beard.
That's
That's
right.
how it was looked at.
And but what
And the guy wasn't he on VH1 for a few seconds?
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
And the point of it is that Todd said, not only am I gonna make a movie with non-stars and really under budget. Oh, you don't have to pay me my $8 million or whatever I get for a movie. Just give me a piece of the back end. I remember when he told me that, I was like, you're out of your mind, dude. You're crazy. This is a tiny movie. I mean, I read the script. It's not that funny. Whatever. This is what an idiot I am. I'm just coming in to play a preacher. It'll be fun. I mean, it's Todd Phillips, so it's gonna be good. But I just figured it'd be a movie like Road Trip. The rest is fucking history, right? The rest is history. But that was Todd's answer to I believe it was an answer to the business. It was like, watch me make the best movie you've ever seen on nothing.
So now is he going to fund Old School 2?
I'm sorry?
Is he going to fund Old School 2 now? He probably could if he wanted to.
That's a good question. I know I'll be lobbying for a part.
I want to be the schoolmaster.
Yeah.
No, but that's
right.
In a wig.
That's the thing, and that is I think what that speaks to is what makes a funny comedy is somebody has to be going, no, this is what it's funny. This is my vision.
Look,
we know as comics, especially in TV, network executives come in and water shit down. You're going to do your comedy special? We want to cut out all those jokes. Those are the funniest jokes, you moron.
Doug Stanhope wrote something that was so great about, he had said something about, I guess, handicapped people, and somebody took offense, some woman, and he said, you know what's really offensive? Bland comedies that you see on TV. Yeah. That's really offensive. I want to be engaged and disturbed by really funny stuff. He wrote this great essay. I don't want to paraphrase him because I can't remember it exactly, but I think that a lot of times what makes a great
cable
movie,
now.
What makes a great funny movie funny is people go, you know what? I'm sick of this bland, this white rice. I'm coming at you with something that's so daring and crazy. Look at something about Mary. They just went for it. They did the craziest shit in the world, and they were like, you know what? I just want to make a splash. I want to wake people up. I'm so sick and tired of this horse shit.
We were talking about Bridesmaids with Laura House. That's like a good example of a bland, female-driven movies. That'll
never sell.
No,
that won't be funny.
No, how about if you make a funny movie with females in the lead?
Yeah.
How about that?
Judd
Try
Apatow
that.
said to Kristen Wiig,
Amazing.
write a funny movie, and she wrote her thing. It doesn't reek of like half a dozen Hollywood punch-up guys going, well, women would never do that.
It's girls the way they really are.
Yes.
Anybody who has a sister knows that's how girls are.
Yeah.
So,
And the other thing, too, like, everything...
That movie could have used me. Keep going. I just had to throw that in there. For Bridesmaids, too.
Because, like, what you're talking about, it's why, like, Louis C.K.'s show is doing well on FX, because FX said, we'll just let you do whatever you want.
Yeah.
He's keeping... I read an article about...
And it's funny.
It's a funny show. His budget is low.
I read the same article.
Oh, yeah.
$250,000.
$250,000 an episode.
He edits on his computer.
He does it all himself. Everybody makes scale, and he just does it because I want it to be my vision. And then he goes, he makes his money selling out arenas. You know what I mean? So, and we have this list in front of us. So you think about all the movies we talked about. Monty Python, they said, this is the movie we're making.
They said the whole first gag of the movie for Monty Python and the Holy Grail, they literally did coconuts because we couldn't afford horses.
Yes.
We couldn't afford horses for the movie.
So they turned it into a joke.
Yeah.
That guy going, Sir Robin was weak and he ran.
It's always those. Now, by the way, think about how much time went into that song and the
Yes.
music and the history.
Exactly.
Seriously. And then cutting those arms and legs off like, none shall pass.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, then you shall die.
Tis but a scratch.
Tis but a scratch. What?
You look at then on this list, Dr. Strangelove and Stanley Kubrick. Like it's not like you don't think of all those wacky Stanley Kubrick movies,
Right,
but he had a vision about a movie that was a very, very scathing social satire about the arms race.
He was saying something.
He was saying something,
And it was funny. You'll have to answer to the Coca-Cola company.
Yeah.
And scary.
and scary. And he said, oh, and Peter Sellers. He obviously went, I want Peter Sellers to like drive so much of this movie.
Let's not forget Sterling Hayden, man.
He got great performances out of George C. Scott. We cannot have a bomb shelter gap. Like that movie is.
Well, name the comedy movie Martin Scorsese made that was fantastic. After Hours.
Oh my God! After Hours.
That's right.
By the way, king of comedy. I don't know if that's a comedy, but by the way, I just thought of something, and maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. I'll give you another criteria for a great comedy movie. For the most part, the actors in the movie can't know that they're in a comedy. The actors in the movie are playing real characters in real situations and reacting in real time like real people would. The tempo might be a little more, a
little amped up.
They might be a little more amped up. But if you think about, for example, Jackie Gleason was playing tragedy and real drama.
He was a blue collar guy living in a shitty apartment.
And you know what? He was the great one. That's why they call him the great one.
Yeah.
So think about it. Think about the Hangover. These guys were dealing with real problems.
You know what?
man.
That's interesting because that even works with like fantasy elements too, like Ghostbusters.
It does.
I mean, that's
Right,
it's
the first
a comedy, and it's the first one, and you realize it's them reacting to crazy supernatural
ghosts.
events. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
How would we
Mm-hmm.
fight ghosts?
Yeah.
Yes, it's a funny premise,
Yeah.
but like, how would we fight ghosts?
Tell them about the Twinkie.
You know what I mean?
serious
I mean, like
problems.
you talk about old school. Like old school was sure on the surface a wacky college movie. Nothing wrong with that. But like Will Ferrell was going through like a divorce, and you know what I mean. Like one guy the movie starts with his girlfriend cheating on him. Like he's going through real shit. Vince Vaughn's character is like hiding money from the government or whatever. Like all that stuff is hilarious, and then it pulls on the like, okay, the nerd that got kicked around and this is our chance to fight back, which is sort of a reoccurring comedy theme. But again, they did it like you said, it was you felt like these are real guys. I hate watching a comedy movie where I'm like, that would never happen. No. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, this guy won't.
Due Date.
Oh God.
Due Date was terrible for one of the reasons of that. Oh, really? They just walked out of a customs booth with all the police, and now they're just in a half beat up car driving across the border, and no other policeman has noticed.
Right.
It takes you out so quickly. You're like, well, now I don't even care if it's funny or not. This is insane.
It's an interesting comment because you wonder. I think it did well. I don't know.
No, it didn't. It didn't do well.
Maybe that's the thing is when you step out of the reality of what you've already set up, that's a huge pitfall.
It kills it, and like there's so many, and I'm trying to think of
Even
like
Ghostbusters had better rules. When you look at that movie, it was a tightly structured, rule-driven, and science fiction has to be that way, or it's a mess. But to do that in science fiction and in comedy together, like Galaxy Quest is another great example of that.
Galaxy Quest
when you
is
put that, it never leaves the mark of what it created.
It made this world. And everyone is really accepting it, like you said. Like they're all. This is how I would react.
And it never went, oh, well, that would never happen, or those characters would never.
Yeah,
do
it was
that.
completely. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but anytime there's like some, like date or like some friend comes and won't leave. Like what was that movie with Owen Wilson and You, Me, and Dupree? I hate a movie where it's like, in the real life, you'd go, hey, shitbird, you're out. The movie's over in 7 minutes. Like, Dupree, we can't get him to leave. He's my best friend. No, you would.
Well, that's a huge. When you present a problem. That was my problem with, like, for example, a movie like Gangs in New York, where I didn't care that much about Leo DiCaprio's journey. I liked Daniel Day-Lewis. I was like, that motherfucker's an honorable fighter. I want that guy to win. And by the way, he fought his dad fair and square. Yeah, DiCaprio's back to, but they made a fatal flaw in that movie where you didn't care about the main hero's problem enough. And let me jump on that, because what I find fascinating is that you can make us care for a cartoon character if you know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I cite Finding Nemo. I don't know if it classifies as a comedy, but let me tell you something. I really wanted that fish to get reunited with his dad, and that was a fucking cartoon. Mm-hmm. I wanted a goldfish to win. That's incredible. That's why that movie is borderline perfect, okay? And I'm an adult, and I was like, okay, well, you have to be careful of the shark.
Right.
I mean, so
Wall-E, too.
Wall-E.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of those Pixar movies, too.
They are those guys. Whoever's involved in that story structure and those characters are
team effort.
Students of the craft.
You're caring
these guys
about
are
fish. You're
fucking
caring about
masters of the
dolls.
craft.
You're caring about robots.
Oh,
You're
they're
caring-
incredible.
And
Those dudes are incredible.
Not really caring about cars, though.
No. Okay. Well, there's always a hit and miss.
Yeah.
but I mean, but that's that again goes back to I think rule number one. You got to keep your characters in the same movie. You have to be in the same movie all the way through. You can't make a left turn, and you have to really care about the characters. Before you have that, the rest of it is whether or not you have a sense of humor.
Right.
But the comedy, in a way, I think if you're writing a comedy movie, is secondary. I really do. I think without the structure and the base and the characters, you're you're wasting your time.
Right, because you can put as many jokes in there as possible. Like you can have funny jokes, but if there's no structure, eventually you don't watch it. You just can't watch it all the way through. You're like there's a lot of comedies where you can go, no, there was some funny jokes in there, but I just never believed that
It's
whatever.
very, very hard to do both. Judd Apatow does something that's very fucking difficult. Todd Phillips does something. That's why there are very few of them. It's hard, man, because you got to be just so disciplined, and you have to know the craft. You have to have done it and know what you're doing.
And you have to be okay with throwing away a scene because it doesn't match a character.
Right. No, but it's really funny. It doesn't matter if it doesn't fit. If it, like it says, if it jumps outside of the movie and what all the characters would be, then you got to get rid of it.
But in a way, those comedy writers and comedy directors, ironically, are very serious people.
Right.
I mean, they are. They love the funny, but that's the bonus. But they're pretty serious people. I mean, they're all kind of. I mean, you got to be like Mike Myers. I have friends who've worked with him, and that dude is like a Nazi about.
He's pretty intense.
About the structure, the math of it, the graph of it.
Because honestly, it comes down to the fact, and we know this as comics, especially after you've been doing it a while. It's like we don't want to be put in a position where we look unfunny. Like, hey, you want to open up for this band? No, I do not. That's the last thing I wanted. No, it's you'll be doing jokes by the pool and the whole fraternity will be
outside. 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Because they'll be listening. Is there a bar in the back where people will be drinking and talking too?
Yeah. Can they have a constant margarita being made?
No, I got to kill myself that weekend. Sorry.
Yes.
I'm too busy.
So it's like And after you show up at a club, or let's say if you I've been doing a lot of shows that are in non-comedy club venues, and we got to get there and make sure it's a rock venue where they think differently. And you got to get there and be like, no. We need the lighting here. Yeah. I want chairs. I don't want them standing. We need the microphone here.
It's rhythm. It's
we got to start on time. Oh, rock shows always. We're not a rock show.
That's why you got to get them listening to your music.
Yeah.
It's like you come to a rock show, somebody gets up and starts playing the cello. People are going to be like, I don't want to hear a cello soundtrack.
No, I'd want to sit down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's go into like some other. Let's go into. This is like one of my Carl Reiner. Like I really want to talk about The Jerk because that was one of those movies when I was a kid that like Steve Martin.
Rags to riches to rags.
It was like that was Steve Martin when he came on the scene. I was a little kid, and my whole family used to sit around and listen to his album.
Right.
Ramblin' Man. Yep. I mean, and so when that movie came out, it was. It starts out, I was born a poor black child. Like that, the jokes in that movie,
such a good movie.
But it had a structure, too.
It had a structure.
It was that Forrest Gump, full triumphant kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we call it retard sage.
Stage. And it was like...
You're damn right it had structure. Oh, by the way, just remember also that the people that came up and were blossoming at the time of The Jerk, which I think, what year was that? 1980?
79.
It was, 1979. Well, if you look at what their backgrounds had been, they didn't grow up with the amount of TV. They didn't grow up with the internet. They grew up reading.
Right.
They all knew the classics. Mm-hmm. They grew up with theater.
Yeah.
And
Walter Cronkite.
Yeah. That's what they grew up with. You had to entertain yourself.
There were still pianos in people's homes back then, too.
That's right. And so you didn't really... Robert McKee talks about this, man. When you were a screenwriter, and there weren't a lot of venues. There wasn't like there was this glut of movies. Now we have so many different avenues. People are looking for content. Back then, if you made it to the studio as a film... You were a very, very select few.
And there was only one way to go. That was the only way to go.
That's right. And a lot of times they would poach guys from the New York theater scene that were these great writers. I mean, for that matter, William Faulkner and Tennessee Williams, they flew them out to write screenplays and stuff.
Well,
Faulkner started drinking. He couldn't take it.
All the guys that came out of Playhouse 90, Patty Chayefsky, Rod Serling.
There you go.
Like, they were all... I know we're veering away from comedies a little bit, but they were classically trained. Yeah, and they were like World War II veterans.
Right. Who wrote The Jerk? And what else did he write? We have our crew on standby. Yeah. to tell us that. Take your time. It's only the internet.
Martin wrote it.
Steve Martin wrote it?
Yeah.
Carl Gottlieb.
Steve Martin can write. That guy's a writer.
That's what I mean. Like he took his and I bet you him and Carl Reiner knows how to do comedy.
But by the way, this is also the same guy that wrote Parenthood, right? I mean,
right.
Okay, so he's writing about stuff. It's almost that Woody Allen-esque thing. Woody Allen was so good at writing these bananas and Take the Money and Run.
Or Manhattan, classic.
Yeah, but then he'd go into Manhattan, or he'd go into Hannah and Her Sister, so he'd go into Crimes and Misdemeanors, which had funny moments, but they were so... That guy touched on every fucking genre. He started out with slapstick and moved all the way to, some of the best dramas.
I mean, if you watch like the jokes of Sleeper has... it has wacky jokes in it, but the structure, again, I know we keep repeating ourselves, but to illustrate the point, the structure of that movie is so solid because, again, and it is a little social commentary in there about the future and where our societies go. There's a great joke in there where they're like, here, have this chocolate bar and smoke a cigarette. It'll make you healthy. It's like, what? I used to work in a health food store. Just about how things are always changing. And cut to now Midnight in Paris, which is kind of a comedy, and it's excellent structure, and it's got Woody Allen's tone and his sense of humor, like his depiction of Ernest Hemingway in Midnight in Paris is awesome.
I gotta see this movie.
You got to see it. You got to see it. I mean,
he's come back. He went off for 20 years. He was doing stuff that it was almost like, I'm going to write a movie because I have nothing else to do.
Yeah,
here it is. It's like, all right, Woody, you are.
Credits are already done.
Yeah. And he comes back with that.
It's a solid, and it's his like subtle sense of humor. There is some social commentary in there about the way we view the past. Yeah, like every generation views the previous one as better than theirs. Right. It's so funny. The turn of the century philosophers in Paris are like, oh, the 1800s were better, and you're just like, and that's a funny commentary the way he does it, which is why I think his movies are awesome.
And speaking of funny movies, also, I think the other reason that Will Ferrell is so amazing is that, again, he's just and Steve Carell. These are great actors that are really playing reality.
And you know what, though? I feel bad for Will Ferrell because he's getting put into these much broader roles that he can actually dial back and stay on track with his characters. Like the other guys is a great example of that, where it's like, what a great concept for a movie. How cool would this would have been if it would have stayed where it was supposed to go instead of adding funny set piece, funny set piece. I'm like, oh, wait, these characters wouldn't even do that.
Like, I like a lot of what Adam McKay does, but I think when his movies miss the mark, it's when he goes into Saturday Night Live mode, when it goes sketch, not movie.
I wonder if that's because he's surrounded by his friends and they're just having too good a time.
Who knows? It could be.
Yeah,
could be.
I mean, if that's the case.
I know Adam from Philly. And,
I don't blame him.
He was the first one to leave Philly too. He's like, I'm going to Chicago.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Like everything we're talking about, a lot of these breakout comedies. One of the reasons why they were the breakout comedies of that era or that generation was because they did the basic thing that you talked about in stand-up. It surprised us. It showed us something different. Like what
this is Spinal Tap is an amazing movie, and
there'd never been a mockumentary prior to that movie.
There was no name mockumentary. There was no genre.
Created a genre.
That is pretty amazing.
They created a genre. There had never been a movie. There had been all those rockumentaries of the 70s, the road movies. Like that had been around enough and then they parodied it. It was just that movie. That's one of those movies you can watch 1,000 times.
And then who co-opted it? Horror.
Yeah.
It actually started in comedy, then it went to horror with Blair Witch and all these other reality quote horror movies. But the thing was interesting about Spinal Tap is not only was it really funny and a great kind of almost postmodern, you could say, take on documentaries, it had we go back to it again, a structure.
Yes.
This movie had a beginning, a middle, and an end to it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really cool, if you have the DVD.
Had a structure. Again, you really got invested in the band.
And the characters.
And the breakup.
Yes.
And the egos. And the girl that it was
the tour. Like, you want the shows to go well.
Yeah, that movie, when you were watching This Is Spinal Tap, you feel bad for those dudes. They're older. Nobody's coming out to see them. That's a fucking tragedy is what it is. They wrote a tragedy and they just happen to have, I believe the structure of that and everything else was written as a as a sort of coming of age, rites of passage where you've got to grow up. It's over. The game is over.
And there was
you've gotta be
actually
able to do
a
it,
real
do it.
documentary a couple years ago, Anvil, the story of Anvil, that was almost like a real life Spinal Tap. It was a great documentary.
Watch the Anvil documentary
Really,
because
Anvil.
it's not the joke. It's the real guy.
First of all, when you call your band Anvil, as opposed to like, I don't know, Hammer, or,
Yeah.
like we're the anvil, we're the
Well,
piece of
they-
steel that you.
They
Had to
were-
be something hard
They
for
were the
metal.
precursor to a lot of metal bands that jumped over them
gotta watch that.
and got hugely famous. And now they're in their 40s and they're like, I just want to make it.
Every single successful metal band knows Anvil and says that they're like one of their influences.
It's unbelievable, and that's like Spinal Tap is the joke version of that. Like it's really funny, but it is tragic to see the record label abandon them. You know what I mean? It starts out they're at this glitzy New York party, and everyone starts to bail on them. Here come the groupies. Pass them up for the better band. That's like as performers, we've all like.
awful.
You were hilarious. And they, if a fan comes up to you after a show and they go, I love that joke. And you're like, no, that was the other dude's joke. I don't do that joke. Oh, well,
Right.
you were interesting. And you're just like, oh, okay, cool, man.
Buy a shirt.
Buy a shirt. Here's my website. And I think like those movies, what jogged my memory when we were talking about that, which is the tragedy and the comedy. I just flashed to Bottle Rocket, which is Wes Anderson's first movie, which is like those guys, Owen Wilson's character. The movie ends up with him in jail.
Spoiler alert.
Sorry, spoiler Bottle Rocket for 1997 or whatever.
Earlier than that, right?
96.
96, yeah.
And the thing about Bottle Rocket, here's a great story. Wes Anderson and Owen Wilson were trying to write a serious heist movie. And they're like, and they're going to rob a bookstore and all this. And they stopped and they were about, 30 pages in. They were like, they rob a bookstore? Like, what are they going to get? $200? Like,
That's actually that's interesting to me because you've got to be honest to what you know too.
Right.
I mean, you can write a heist movie. The problem with writing a heist movie is that thing, Things to Do in Denver Before You're Dead.
Right.
That was written by, I don't know who wrote that, but that was written by a guy who doesn't even know criminals.
Right.
I know he probably
Ever.
argued with me. That guy's never met a criminal.
No.
And he certainly doesn't know what a gang of criminals is like.
No.
That was so fabricated. It was so like
But it felt it that way, with the dialogue with
that's
William.
the problem. It's a buckwheat and all this stuff. It's like, come on, dude, you're
Scott
inventing-
Rosenberg.
It's not how real criminals talk.
No.
Oh, is that what? I know him.
and that's the thing.
Oh, I hope he's not listening to this
Actually didn't know
podcast.
him.
He's great. Good people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Scott,
But like Bottle Rocket, those guys knew they lived in a small town in Texas, so they're like, let's write some guys that want to break into like the dreams aren't big, of the characters of Bottle Rocket.
Yeah.
And they can't, they just cast themselves
they're
and
just shitty criminals.
they're just shitty criminals.
low grade, and that's how a lot of
Is Thing to Do in
criminals-
Denver You're Dead, didn't it have that scene, though, with Dennis Hopper?
No, it was Chris Walken and
Chris Walken
who
and-
was on. I think he was in.
Yeah, but didn't Chris
the
Walken
wheelchair.
find Dennis Hopper
I don't
as
know.
like a father? Is Dennis Hopper in that movie? Or am I
Forgot
thinking of
that.
a different movie?
No, Dennis Hopper's not in
Find the Chris Walken Dennis Hopper movie.
it. Aren't there several?
Yeah, cross reference. See which one they're moving.
Cross-reference.
But like again, and Bottle Rocket was like these
See this?
these losers. You have one right there, friend.
Oh, I do.
You have it's these losers that like have small town dreams, and like he's like they steal $240 from and they need to go on the lam because he's like they're going to find us at the airports and they want to be bigger than they are.
I think that's what I'm talking about. I
worked
think it's a
with,
Tarantino
David
movie
Zucker on
that I'm talking about.
Airplane. Look at that.
It's True Romance, I think.
True Romance.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
You know who
okay.
I am, Mr. Wally?
That's it.
I'm
Yeah,
the
that's it.
Antichrist, and you got me in a vendetta kind of mood.
You do the best, Chris.
Do a little game of showing. No, who has it? Nothing. Show me everything. I'm Sicilian. My grandfather was the world heavyweight champion of Sicilian liars. So I grew up learning the pantomime. The guy is 19, girl 21, but anyway.
Yeah, that's right. Guy's got 19 pantomimes, women 21. The way he's
I haven't killed anybody since 1984. Get this egg off my face. I know that whole scene. That was such an incredible scene.
But like getting back to Bottle Rocket, it also jogged my memory about Bowfinger which is a Steve Martin movie, and Eddie Murphy.
Yes.
Which I loved because, again, it's guys that are so small time. And like the end of that movie where they've got written out and they're at the studio bought them out and they're in the shitty seats at the premiere and they're like, we did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like Owen Wilson's character at the end of Bottle Rocket. They come to visit him in prison. He's like, we really had him on the run. He's like, okay, man, sure. Like to them, that was so great. And again, like,
well, in a way, that's interesting because you want your characters to be happy. It doesn't mean that they win for your.
But if they think they win. Then I mean that's also part of the comedy. If this low rent.
I'm also looking at your list here, and this is a great list you guys made: Manhattan, Airplane, Spinal Tap, Ghostbusters, Coming to America. There's I wouldn't put that there, but there's something about Mary, 40.
I love
Virgin.
Coming to America.
Great, but I just don't put it in the same pantheon.
Right.
But that's just a matter of opinion. I'm right, you're wrong, but that doesn't matter.
Your opinion is that of a moron, but as we speak,
but it's so interesting how different they all are.
Oh,
and how
40-Year-Old Virgin was a real sleeper hit too.
was such a good movie.
No one thought that was going to be as good as it
that's what I'm
was. And it
saying.
was great.
This
Funny.
list is all
Yeah.
about everything we're talking about. Most of these movies came out of nowhere. They surprised people. They did something different, or they broke something. Like that's why, to me,
but
Coming
that's
to
what
America.
we said. It's
I don't think
surprise.
Duck Soup came out of nowhere.
It didn't come out of nowhere.
But it's surprise. You're like, what the, wow,
Yeah, and to me, like no one was expecting Steve Carell to this movie that he basically did.
You know what though? We believed him. Like we
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
We invest in the reality.
Believed everybody
of
in
their
that
life.
in that movie. I
And-
mean, even Seth Rogen is the pothead friend, and
All
then
the guys
even
that work in the electronics
Jane
store.
Lynch is
By
the
way,
manager.
do you
My
know,
God,
do you know what
believe her.
movie I laughed my ass off in? Was I Love You, Man. I laughed my ass
You know
off
what?
at
That brings a good. Let's do around the table one guilty pleasure comedy. That like
For me, it was definitely I Love You, Man. I was surprised at how hard I laughed at that movie. It was fucking funny. It was just Paul Rudd killed me in that. And so
He's
did-
funny. He keeps playing this. They keep casting him. He keeps doing these studio things where he's kind of doing the same thing over and over. But he's
But
a
you
funny.
root for the guy.
You do. He's a funny guy.
Yeah, he doesn't take himself seriously. I think he's from Kansas City.
You know,
and he's just
I've met him.
great
He's a
guy.
real easygoing dude.
Yeah.
Like, what's your?
I would say the two Hot Tub Time Machine, which I loved. I laughed through the entire thing, and great story, great characters all the way through. And my other real guilty pleasure, UHF.
Oh,
Weird Al's
UHF!
movie.
I love UHF.
saw UHF.
A young
it's
Michael
so
Richards
funny.
is in it.
Oh my God, yeah.
Pre-racist tirade.
Yeah,
Michael Richards.
Fran Drescher. There's 1,000 people. Anthony Geary from General Hospital in this movie, and it's hysterical. It's Weird Al doing parodies, and guy from The Sopranos is in it. Really,
My
funny
guilty
movie.
pleasure for comedies is probably Schindler's List. I just
What part?
you're missing the whole. No, my
You
guilty.
did that before with romantic comedies.
You know, on Mad TV, my first year, we did a sketch called Schindler's Lost. I'm serious, and it was the first sketch I ever did on TV, and I was Schindler. And I had to wear this wig, and I was doing. This sounds like Arnold, but that was basically my Schindler. And I was trying to play Liam Neeson, I'm lost. And here's the joke. And this was written by somebody who was actually Jewish, whose name will remain. I won't say his name, but
Bobby Lee.
No. yes. From the Jewish section of Korea. But I'm lost, and as a result, Jews, I don't get to the Jews in time. They get put on a train, and they get sent to Auschwitz. Hilarious, right? I was like, this isn't offensive at all. It was just unbelievable. And I was a history major, and my area of focus was Nazi Germany. So I'm like doing this. I'm like, this has got to be the most offensive sketch I've ever. But I was new, and I was
Right, what are you
it was
gonna do?
written and run by Jewish people. So I was like, I guess I'm okay here. I don't know. And I'm doing this sketch about Schindler getting lost, and my wife can't find the directions, and the Jews all die at the end of the sketch. They get put on a train. And so, I was like, all right, I guess I guess this is my first sketch on Mad TV. The legend is, I don't know if this is true, but I will tell you that what happened was Steven Spielberg got wind of the sketch and said, if you guys air that, I'll do everything I can to try to, shut you down. whether that's true or not, I know Quincy Jones got a call from somebody because we didn't air that sketch. That never got aired, and that is in the vault somewhere.
And
Schindler's
you know what?
Waltz.
Megan Fox got kicked out of that sketch too.
That's exactly right, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, there's that. You want to talk about? There's the Day the Clown Cried movie, which is like this. That's the Jerry Lee Lewis movie where it's this horrible movie where he plays a clown that entertains kids before they go
Into the gas chamber.
In the gas chamber, and
remember,
they hit it like every time they try to do a table
if
read.
done well, you can have a story. Look, Hogan's Heroes.
I actually
Guess
read
what?
the script for The Day the Clown Cried.
Well, they do
and
table
it was-
readings of it secretly.
Really?
Yeah, well, it was but the script is like almost 200 pages long. But it was one of those things where it's rumored. It's like you never get the full story. It's like, well, was it really shot? Was part of it shot? Is there an actual movie? You don't know for sure.
But anything, the good thing about comedy is that anything is permissible if done right. Anything.
Yes.
I mean anything.
If you do it right.
Like I was thinking about the pitch for Hogan's Heroes. Yeah, we're Americans and we're in a German prisoner of war camp. When World War II? Yeah, wouldn't that be a concentration camp? Because last I checked, the Germans weren't exactly very nice to anybody. They'd usually starve you to death.
No, but they'll be
If you were
wacky.
lucky.
Schultz will be funny.
Yeah, and by the way, it was a hit. So it all depends on.
Well, my guilty pleasure is Neighbors with John Belushi and Dan
Great
Aykroyd.
movie.
Oh,
Hey, you know what? If we're gonna go there, I loved Volunteers. Killed me.
Oh, nice. Here's what I loved about Neighbors, and it was in the theaters for like a minute. It was, I think, one of the second to last movie Belushi made before he OD'd and died. I think the last one was that movie where he's the writer that goes with the Eagles or whatever. Anyway, Neighbors, I love it because, I mean, obviously Blues Brothers, again, could obviously be on this list because there had never been like a musical like movie like that. There'd been plenty of quote unquote comedy musicals. So I love Blues Brothers, but Neighbors to me was like, it was so weird. I used to use that movie in high school and college as a test to see if someone had a sense of humor or not.
Yeah.
I'd say, have you seen Neighbors? And if they're like, yeah, and they were like, what'd you think of it? They're like, it was dumb. I'd be like, oh, okay, well
that's
thank
like
you
I
so
broke up
much.
with a girl for falling asleep during Raging Bull, so I understand. She fell asleep. I was like, we're not dating anymore. But I'll bang you a couple more times. Now, the fact that you have Coming to America in where planes, trains, and automobiles ought to be is outrageous.
We only had so much room on
this is not a complete
What
list.
kind of a
not a complete
podcast
This
is
is not
shit?
a complete
That's
list.
the problem is when you get into it, it's so many great comedies.
we could
Planes,
this
Trains,
could-
and Automobiles is an amazing movie.
film. The reason why, to me, Coming to America is on this is because it was like the height of Eddie Murphy, the characters
And
he did,
Arsenio Hall,
and Arsenio
too.
Hall, the characters they did, and there's so many like boys, Mama call him Clay, I'm gonna call him Clay. Like there's so many great lines
There
on
were
there.
some good stuff
You know,
on there.
sexual chocolate. You know what I mean? Like, oh, these boys
Speaking
are
of Eddie
good.
Murphy, what would you say his best comedy was? Was it 48 Hours? Was it? He was something else.
I put Coming to America up there. There's 48 Hours is good, and then there's the obviously Trading Places. I think was sort of his
Trading Places
was
up
his
there,
breakout
Great
movie.
yeah.
But to me, I almost got to call it Coming to America because it's like I loved all those.
I don't know, 48 Hours I really liked.
Joe Louis was 147 years old. Like, I don't know, the guys in the barbershop, that's all him and Arsenio Hall.
Y'all ever heard of Muhammad Ali?
Yeah, you know what I
A
mean?
gentleman by the name of Cassius
Clay.
Clay. That's exactly how guys talk.
That was
Those stupid age-old debates. Who would win in a fight, a hyena or a fucking pit bull?
I put those on my
leopard
Twitter all the
or a
time.
baboon?
I always do like shark versus lion,
But then
3
you give
feet
an
of
arena,
water.
too.
Guys are retards, and that's
Yeah.
I'm a huge retard for that stuff. I love that.
In a kiddie pool.
In a kiddie pool, who
Why we watch
wins?
fights. That's
Yeah.
why the UFC is so popular. Boxing and
Fight
that
it.
shit. Let's see what happens.
All right. Well, what else? What else? We're almost out of time here, friend. Any other?
No, I wanted to do guilty pleasures and movies and ones that we did. We covered everything.
We covered
everything.
everything.
There's obviously a lot of movies we haven't talked about or covered, and please feel free to put them on your message boards. Your favorite comedy.
Put your favorite comedies on the message board. I know there's a million obscure ones. I mean, like Royal Tenenbaums we could put in there. Rushmore is to me like a perfect movie. It has more dramatic scenes. I mean, I love Rushmore.
You know what? Not a big fan of Wes Anderson's middle movies. I actually liked Bottle Rocket, and I really loved his least successful one, the one on the train in India.
Oh, the Darjeeling.
Darjeeling Limited. Yeah, I found that movie to be unbelievably engaging and just really fun to watch, and I haven't really those other ones, Rushmore and Tenenbaums, didn't really resonate with me as much.
Oh, wow. I thought,
a lot of people loved them. Those were one of those kind of movies. Oh, you got to see this movie, and I see it, and I'm like, oh, you know what? That's good. Let's go around the table now and say comedy movies you were supposed to love, but you didn't. I will start. Little Miss Sunshine. Did not love that movie.
I really loved it so much, and I cried. So I was with my girl, and I was crying. I watched when that kid finds out he's colorblind. I don't know what
that scene, and
I cried so hard because I think it just reminded me of being your dreams dashed as a young man. Oh my god!
Which movie are you talking about?
Little Miss Sunshine.
Little Miss Sunshine, where the kid finds out he can't be an astronaut.
Oh, that
Maybe
okay.
You didn't see
Yeah, I saw
Maybe
that
you
part.
didn't watch it.
I was thinking. I thought you were going to talk about the girl dancing at the end.
No, but that's a great scene, and he hasn't been talking the whole movie, and he flips out, and he's sitting there, and his sister just comes up and puts her arm around him. She doesn't say a word. And I love Greg Kinnear, like at this, like,
so good.
Don't be a loser, and all those slogans that he's trying to pitch. It's so like you feel so bad, like oh god, he's this guy. He's trying to pitch this stupid self-help.
But that's
thing.
okay. Some things don't speak to you. What else didn't speak to you?
That was the main one. That was, and then there's Wes Anderson movies. But I can't say that I don't like him as a director because I did like Darjeeling Limited and I liked Bottle Rocket. I just didn't like those ones. I didn't like Rushmore.
Wes Anderson's movies don't necessarily speak to me as much because the people he chooses are not guys that I identify with. They're just usually guys that are so helpless as men. Like this kid he uses in Rushmore. What's the kid's name?
Jason Schwartzman. Yeah.
Jason Schwartzman he just strikes me as a guy who just can't defend himself. Like, I always make this joke, if you can't throw a punch or a spiral, chances are I'm not going to necessarily identify with you. I'm not trying to be macho, but I'm just saying that usually that kind of guy is such a pussy to me. Like, he's just a guy who it's already done. I look at him, I'm like, do a push-up, bro.
So you don't like Big Bang Theory?
Not even a fucking bit. I want to have sex. I want to big bang that girl, and that's it. Everything else can,
So what's a comedy movie then that people liked and you didn't like?
I'm trying to think. I know TV stuff where it alienates me, but what's a comedy movie that I didn't like? Jesus, I don't know.
Graham? While Brian's thinking.
Oh. God, what was it? What was the movie that
How come you guys not think of comedy movies you didn't like?
Oh, there's so many that but I'm trying. There's so many that
Somebody say Dinner for Schmucks.
But a movie that everyone else was like, oh, that's a
little harder.
That's harder because most of my friends are comics, and so most of their opinions I'm gonna not agree with them all the time,
right.
but I'm gonna understand. We're gonna
Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Warmer, getting warm.
I like Big Fat Greek Wedding because I grew up in Chicago and Greek diners. I was used to that, and so there was a lot about getting big.
Yeah,
fat
usually when the woman is the star in it and she's verklempt and flustered by something, I don't really give a shit. But that's because
she can't throw a spiral.
That's
because you can't throw a spiral.
Yeah, that's
or throw a punch.
I just mean, it's like. Like oh God, I don't want to say anything, but some TV shows. It's like
I know I can think of them. God, there's some movie that everyone's like, "Oh, you got to see this. Was amazing," and I was just like, "God, what did?" Oh, that's happened to me several times. I'm blanking.
All right, we'll do it on the iPhone app.
No, you know what it was? Honestly, on this list, I look at it. There's something about Mary. There was scenes of that movie where I went. Everyone was telling me, "Oh, it's fucking these guys, the Frelly brothers, they're bang bang," and I was like,
I didn't laugh a lot.
I didn't think it was that good.
And those guys,
I didn't laugh a lot. I thought it was good.
I just was always just like, yeah, it was okay. Like, oh, she's got spunk in her hair. Yeah.
All right, Brian, just one movie.
One movie.
One movie that you didn't like that everyone else seemed to like.
Come on, Brian, do it. Think it. Put it in your brain. Make it.
I would say The Godfather. That was a comedy, right, guys?
Funny.
Did I miss it? Maybe I missed the. I just think it was funny.
Deer Hunter, the ending was like.
Yeah, I thought that wasn't funny.
It was
when
tacky.
he's got no feet.
You know what apparently was a comedy? Scarface, if you watch it in Miami.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Apparently, I was
Stop
reading.
or my mom will shoot. Didn't think it was funny. Throw mama from the train. Didn't think it was funny. Yeah, I don't know. I don't fucking know. I'm sure I'll think of it and then I'll just come back. You guys hang out for about an hour.
All right, well, let's wrap it up.
Well, that's just about our show.
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
So that was.
I'm so glad Brian stopped by.
Oh, dude,
Brian,
that was great.
Where can some people find you online? Do a little plug time.
Brian, Facebook at Bryan Callen Comedy. That's my fan page. Oh, God, it's so sad.
Hello.
Yeah, no, it's just you get more friends, and then you have to have a fan page because you only go to 5,000. So it's retarded.
They cut you off.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, and then I'm going to be at the Punchline in San Francisco, August 10th to the 13th.
Nice, great
I'll
club.
be bringing the heat. I haven't done it.
It's a great club. I
Yeah,
played
I
it
bet.
several times with Doug, and then I just did a headline night there.
Is it in the middle of San Francisco?
It's right downtown.
I love it.
It's awesome. You stay across the street. It's great.
I can't wait.
It's great. I
Love it
love
up
it.
there.
Chinatown's right there. You can walk
Is it
around.
near North Beach?
No,
Okay.
I love San Francisco.
it's great.
I have this fantasy of living in San Francisco and having longer hair than I do, which is impossible because I'm losing it. And just being like a guy who smokes a pipe and wears a tweed jacket and reads leather-bound books.
You would need a time machine.
I would. I know. That's the thing about technology. We're losing the tactile feel of things. The tactile feel. Right. Everything's at our fingertips. ladies
Well,
and gentlemen.
folks, tune in to go see Brian up in San Francisco and check him out on the Facebook. Any other movie projects you got coming up?
I'm actually I have my TV show Death Valley, which I shot 12 episodes out on. Is one of the funniest things I've ever done in my life. Comes out.
It's your show,
It's me plus some great actors and it's called Death Valley. I play the captain of the Undead Task Force, and our job is to keep the Valley of Los Angeles free of werewolves, zombies, and vampires. And it's run by Eric Weinberg, who wrote a lot of the episodes, who is with a team of great writers, and he ran Scrubs for 6 years with Bill Lawrence, one of the producers.
What's this going to be on?
It's on MTV, and it's so funny, and I had
Nice.
such a great time doing it. And I shot a 1-hour Comedy Central special, which I think is coming out soon, and then I'm coming out in a movie called Warrior with Nick Nolte and Tom Hardy, and it's a Lionsgate picture. It comes out September 9th. I have a really good part in it. I'm kind of the comedic relief. So,
Sweet.
Cool.
so there it is.
Well, we've got a lot of stuff coming up on the site. Very excited, and we want to again thank you guys for really purchasing stuff in the store. Really appreciate you guys.
That's how we keep the show free.
Yeah, we ask you to spend if you like the podcast, spend $20 a year in the store or more. We really appreciate it. We don't want to ask for donations. We want you guys to get something for your money. And there's a lot of new stuff in the store. And still, every gift pack, free Woot Monkey, and you buy a Comedy Film Nerds shirt. Put in the customer notes, hey, I want a Woot Monkey. You'll get one as well.
You get a free Woot Monkey. We'll even sign the back of the cape.
Yes, and as always, my book, Pacify Me, a handbook for the freaked out new dad, is available. And Graham, we've got your gift pack is
Sure. And Afghanistan, you guys have been downloading that. Still, here we are.
Every day there's downloads
Every day you
for
guys
that movie.
download that. Very much appreciate it. And so, which is awesome. I really appreciate the support on that. I will be at the Tacoma Comedy Club August 12th and 13th headlining. So check it out. Thanks again, Bryan Callen. My name is Graham Elwood.
And I'm Chris Mancini. And as always, Han shot first.